Hello everyone, it's me again. Well, we're continuing on with this and we're going to be doing something slightly different. Well, not different because I'd already done one before like this, but we're going to be listening to Modao Zushi's English audio book of the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, which is these boys are from, The Untamed. And we are on chapter 2 now. Now this is the one by Luna Minerva, and she always says that, Luna Minerva. So yeah, but it's one of the better ones, you know, because it's a real person reading it, and she makes an effort with all the pronunciations. So you know, words like Mo Manor are Mo Manor, unlike the other ones where I've been listening to where it turns into Missouri. Missouri Manor. It's like, okay. Oh dear. AI, that's an American. Never mind. Right, so onwards.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to quickly preface this chapter and say that I am sick currently, so I am actually going to record, edit and upload this chapter today, which is going to be a lot of work, but I really hope that it's worth it. And also it's an explanation to why I sound different, or I think I'll sound different. By the way, check out this crazy illustration made by Jotun and Hime on Instagram. I really hope I pronounced that right. Now, without further ado, I present to you...
Oh, I love this. Ah, yes.
The founder of Demonic Cultivation.
Dear.
An English translation
Episode 2,
by
though.
Fan EE33.
Wait for it.
Read by Luna Minerva.
There's the Minerva.
Chapter 2. Aggression. Part 1. Wei Wuxian wanted to wash his face and pay his respects to his body's former owner, but the room had no water. None for drinking, none for washing. Nothing. The single bowl, he guessed, was meant for bodily wastes, and thus could not be used for his purposes. He pushed on the door, but found that it had been bolted shut, presumably because the family feared Mo Xuanyu would go outside and cause trouble.
And he would.
There wasn't a single thing about the situation that allowed him to feel the joy of rebirth. He figured he might as well meditate for a while and get used to his body. When he opened his eyes again, a whole day had passed, and sunlight was leaking through the cracks between the door and the walls, and through the slits in the windows. Though he could now stand and walk around, he was still light-headed, and his eyes were still blurry, hardly better than yesterday. Something was odd. This Mo Xuanyu's cultivation is so weak that his spiritual energy can be ignored, but there's no reason I shouldn't be able to control his body. Why can't I do anything? It wasn't until his stomach let out a loud growl that he realized the problem had nothing to do with Mo Xuanyu's cultivation and everything to do with the fact that he was extremely hungry and his new body was not used to fasting. He needed to look for food soon, or else he was at risk of becoming the first demonic spirit to take over a new body, only to starve to death. Gathering his energy, Wei Wuxian lifted his foot and prepared to bust down the door. But suddenly, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps, and then of someone kicking the door and irritatedly shouting, "It's time to eat." The door did not open despite the yelling. Lowering his head, Wei Wuxian glanced towards it and found that a smaller door had been built at the bottom of the wooden board. It was through this door his bowl of food passed. "Faster," the servant outside said. "Why are you taking so long? Pass the bowl back when you're done." The little door was too small for even a dog to pass through, let alone a human, though it was adequate for the bowl. Wei Wuxian's rations, it looked too unappetizing to be deemed food, consisted of 2 types of vegetables atop steamed rice. He mixed them around with the chopsticks stuck in the rice, feeling a little sorry for himself. The old master of Yiling had only just returned to the world of the living, and all he had been met with was a kick to the chest and a raging temper tantrum. Now, he had nothing more than these cold, slimy leftovers for his first meal. Where were the foul winds and blood rains? The slaughter which spared not even the dogs and chickens? The extinctions? If he told someone he was back, who would believe him? At present, he was like a tiger being bullied by a dog on the plain, or a dragon by shrimp in shallow water. If you plucked the feathers of a phoenix, was it even worth as much as a hen? Outside, the servant shouted again, but this time he also giggled as though he'd been body swapped. "Ah Ting, come over here!" A girl's voice, crisp and sassy, replied from a distance. "Atong, delivering food to the one in there again?" "Why else would I be in this wretched courtyard?" Atong replied. Ating's voice approached the door. "Your only job is to deliver him food. No one says anything if you just loaf around the rest of the time, and you're still complaining about the courtyard? Look at me. I have so much work I can't even step outside the house." "I don't just deliver food," he whined. "Do you even have the guts to go out these days? There's so many walking corpses, everyone's bolted their doors shut." Wei Wuxian squatted and leaned on the door, shoveling rice into his mouth with mismatched chopsticks, listening closely. It seemed like things were not quite tranquil at Mo Manor. Walking corpses were the bodies of dead people, reanimated. They were common and relatively weak, possessing dull, stagnant eyes and a lumbering, sluggish gait. Though they weren't particularly powerful or dangerous, they were strong enough to scare ordinary people stiff. A single whiff of their putrefying flesh was enough to make most vomit the entire contents of their stomachs. But as far as Wei Wuxian was concerned, walking corpses were the easiest to order around and the most obedient puppets. Hearing so suddenly of them, he almost felt a burst of affection. "If you want to go out," Atong said, the wink practically visible in his voice, "you could bring me and I could protect you." "You protect me?" Ating replied. "Please, don't boast. Could you really beat those things?" "If I can't fight them off, no one else can either," Atong huffed. "How do you know?" she laughed. "You know, a bunch of cultivators came here today. I heard that they're from an amazing and prestigious clan. Lady Moore is in the main hall speaking to them right now, and everyone in town has come to watch. Can't you hear all the noise? I don't have time to fool around with you. They might need me soon." Wei Wuxian listened carefully. The sound of hubbub could indeed be heard coming from the east. He pondered for a minute, rose, and launched a hard kick at the door. The bolt cracked and split. The two servants were right in the middle of giggling and making eyes at each other when the door flung open. They screeched as though a bomb had gone off in their faces.
Teach him.
Wei Wuxian tossed his bowl and chopsticks on the ground and sauntered outside without acknowledging them. The sun stung his eyes so harshly that he couldn't pry open his eyelids, and even his skin felt singed by the sun's glare. To let his eyes adjust, he raised his hand above his eyebrows to block out the rays. Atong's scream had been even shriller than Ating's, but once he saw the lunatic everyone bullied and composed himself, his courage ballooned. Attempting to redeem himself from his embarrassing behavior, he bounded towards Wei Wuxian, waving his hand and scolding the old yearling master in the same tone he scolded dogs. Go back! Why are you out here?" Most of the time, this was how the servants behaved toward Mo Xuanyu. Even beggars and insects were treated better than he was. Since he never fought back, they felt free to run rampant. But Wei Wuxian lightly kicked Atong, sending him tumbling. "Are you really trying to bully me?" he said, laughing. He continued on in the direction of the clamor. Surrounding the building were a number of spectators, gathered both in and outside the eastern hall of the eastern courtyard. Inside, one woman's head stuck out above the rest of the crowd. As soon as Wei Wuxian stepped foot into the courtyard, he heard her voice. "One of the junior members of our household was also a cultivator, you see." This had to be Lady Mo, trying every means possible to create a connection between a cultivation clan and her family, as usual. In no mind to wait for her to finish, he squeezed through the sea of people and rushed into the hall, waving his hands wildly. I'm coming! Here! In the middle of the hall sat a middle-aged woman of good complexion, wearing very fine clothing, Lady Mo. Beneath her sat her husband, who had married into her family and thus had lower status than his wife. Across from the couple sat several youths clad in white, bearing swords on their backs. All noise abruptly died as the disheveled, clown-faced maniac burst through the crowd. As though completely oblivious to the atmosphere, Wei Wuxian hollered, "Who was calling for me just now? I'm the junior cultivator." The powder caked on his face cracked as he smiled, cascading to the ground in streams of white and red. One of the white-clad youths made a choking noise and looked dangerously close to bursting into laughter. The youth beside him, seemingly the leader of the group, shot him a disapproving glance. He quickly sobered. Wei Wuxian's gaze swept through the crowd to the source of the noise. Originally, he had thought that the amazing and prestigious clan was merely the exaggeration of a naive servant, but to his shock, he was quite mistaken. Who knew that the junior cultivators who had shown up at the Mo family's doors really were from a prominent clan? They wore robes that were light and graceful like the breeze, and beautiful like the morning frost, and their sleeves and sashes seemed to float and glide with their every movement. Their bearing was refined and upright, and their countenance pleasing to the eye. A single glance was enough to know that they were from the Kusu Lan clan. Some were even juniors of House Lan itself. They bore around their foreheads their house's characteristic white ribbons, as wide as a finger and embroidered with cirrus clouds. The Kusu Lan clan's motto was righteousness. The forehead ribbon signified self-rule, and cirrus clouds were its house emblem. The clan's guest cultivators or others from outside the family could not wear them. Just looking at members of the House Lan made Wei Wuxian's teeth ache. In his past life, he had often called the Lan clan uniforms morning clothes. He could never mistake them. Lady Mo had not seen her nephew for a long time, and took a very long time to recover from the shock of seeing him now. Once she recognized who the man wearing the thick, gaudy, hideous makeup was, rage flared in her heart. But in the present circumstances, she couldn't lash out. Suppressing the bile in her throat, she said to her husband, "Who let him out? Put him back!" Her husband smiled obsequiously and rose. With a face cast in shadow, he stepped toward Wei Wuxian and prepared to haul him out, only for the clown-faced maniac to suddenly throw himself onto the floor. All four of his limbs clinging firmly to the ground, Wei Wuxian defied husband Mo's attempts to drag him outside. Even when several servants were called over to help, he still refused to budge. The family would have long started to beat him if it weren't for the presence of guests. Lady Mo's expression grew more sour and angry every moment, while husband Mo's face was covered in a sticky layer of sweat. "You stupid lunatic!" he roared. "If you don't leave this instant, I will deal with you, and it will be ugly." While everyone knew that the Mo family had a young master who had been driven mad, Mo Xuanyu had been hidden away in his dark room for many years now, too frightened to stick his head out for fear of encountering another living soul. To see him in public, both looking and acting like some kind of ghost or demon, whispers immediately began to swirl around both the hall and the courtyard. This was the show everyone wanted to see. "If you want me to go, that's fine," Wei Wuxian said before pointing at Mo Ziyuan. "But tell him to give back the things he stole first." Mo Ziyuan would never in a million years have suspected that this lunatic could have so much nerve. It was only yesterday he had taught his cousin a lesson, yet today that sad sack still had the guts to show his face here? "Stop talking nonsense," he said, his complexion turning red, then white, then red again. "Since when have I stolen anything? Why would I need to steal from you?" "That's right," Wei Wuxian said. "You didn't steal from me. You robbed me!" This time Lady Mo realized what was occurring. Mo Xuanyu had come prepared. He wasn't insane, his mind was clear as could be, and he was here for one purpose: to humiliate them. Unable to hold it in any longer, she burst into stunned fury. "You intentionally came here to cause trouble, didn't you?" "He stole my things," Wei Wuxian replied. "I'm here to ask for them back. That still counts as causing trouble?" Before Lady Mo could answer, Mo Ziyuan, too anxious to control himself, lifted his foot and prepared to launch a kick at his cousin. But one of the sword-bearing, white-clad youths made a slight motion with his finger, sending him off balance and his foot flying towards empty space. While he tumbled to the ground, Wei Wuxian rolled over as though his cousin's kick had connected. He tore open the front of his robe, revealing the foot-shaped bruise in the exact center of his chest, planted by Mo Ziyuan in yesterday's assault. The villagers salivated as they observed the drama, excited beyond measure. After all, Mo Xuanyu could hardly have kicked himself. At the end of the day, he was still the Mo family's blood relative. How cruel were they? When Mo Xuanyu had first come home, he clearly hadn't been as insane as he was now, so there was a 4 out of 5 chance it had been caused by the Mo's mistreatment. The more they oppressed him, the crazier he got. Whatever the truth was, as long as there was commotion, the villagers were happy. It wasn't as though the Moors could abuse them. This display was far more interesting than the arrival of the cultivators. With so many pairs of eyes fixed upon her, unable to hit Mo Xuanyu or throw him out, Lady Mo could only march around the hall, holding her resentment and anger within her throat as though holding her breath. Lightly she said, "What theft? What robbery? There's no need to use such ugly words. We're family. Ayun was just borrowing, that's all. He's basically your little brother. If he takes a few things, is it such a big problem? As the older brother, should you really be so stingy? It's embarrassing to have a childish temper tantrum over such small things. It's not as though he won't return them to you." The white-clad youths exchanged helpless glances. One of the youths in the middle of drinking tea nearly choked. The juniors of the Gusu Lan clan had spent their lives in the mountains, exposed to only the snow, the moon, the flowers, and the wind. They had probably never seen this kind of farce or heard this type of wisdom. Unfortunately, it seemed that they would grow a little more worldly today. Laughing hysterically inside, Wei Wuxian stuck his hand out and said, "Then, return my things to me." Of course, Mo Ziyuan wouldn't have been able to return Mo Xuanyu's things even if he had wanted to. He had long since thrown them away or taken them apart. "Mom!" he cried. His face was now a shade somewhere between gray and green, and his expression clearly said, "You're just letting this person humiliate me?" Lady Mo glowered at her son, beseeching him to not make an even bigger scene. But no one anticipated what Wei Wuxian said next. "To be completely honest, he not only shouldn't have stolen my things, he really shouldn't have stolen them in the middle of the night. Everyone knows that I like men. Even I know it looks suspicious for him to sneak into my room so late, but he doesn't even know how to be embarrassed." The shock left Lady Mo gasping for breath. "How dare you say those things, especially in front of the villagers?" she shrieked. "Don't you feel ashamed? Ayun is your cousin." When it came to wild, outrageous behavior, Wei Wuxian was the best of the best. In his previous life, there were certain limits on how far he could take his misbehavior without bringing shame upon his house teachings. But today, he was supposed to be a lunatic anyway. Who cared about pride and reputation? The more outrageous he acted, the better. Whatever he wanted to do, he'd do it. "He knows he's my cousin, but he still doesn't try to avoid suspicion. Exactly who's the one who should be ashamed? If he doesn't care about his reputation, fine, but don't soil my innocence. I still want to find a good man someday." Mo Ziyuan howled. He picked up a chair and swung it violently. To avoid the explosion of temper, Wei Wuxian rolled away, scrambled up, and hid. The chair struck the floor, splintering and sending chunks of wood ricocheting skywards. The rows and rows of spectators inside and outside the Eastern Hall, who had been delighting in the disastrous spectacle of the Mo family's utter humiliation, scattered like birds when the smashing started, afraid of falling victim to misaimed strikes and flying debris. Wei Wuxian scrambled towards the Lan juniors, who watched the scene in a daze. He ducked behind them and noisily said, "You saw it, right? Right? Not only does he steal, he beats people. What a cruel, heartless person!" Mo Ziyuan chased after Wei Wuxian for another swing, but was blocked by the Lan group's leader. "Young master, please, let's resolve this using words." Observing that the youth was attempting to protect the lunatic and afraid of the consequences of angering his clan, Lady Mo plastered on a fake smile. "This is my younger sister's son. He has some problems, up there. Everyone in this household knows that he's insane. If he says some odd things, you shouldn't take him seriously. Cultivators, please don't. Before she could finish, Wei Wuxian popped his head out from behind the youth's back. Who says not to take my word seriously? If anyone dares to steal my things from now on, just try me. Steal from me and I'll chop your arm off. Though Mo Ziyun was now held down by his father, as soon as he heard those words, his rage flared up again, and he was in danger of breaking free. Like a fish leaping out of the water, Wei Wuxian jumped out, then swam again through the exit. The youth, now blocking the door, decided that changing the topic was perhaps the best course of action. He put on a solemn face. So tonight we will borrow your western courtyard. As I said previously, please remember to close your doors and windows tightly, and not to come outside after dusk, especially near the courtyard. You must obey our instructions for everyone's safety. Lady Mo was shaking with apoplexy, but as she couldn't push the youth out of the way and chase after her nephew, she could only say, "Fine, sorry to trouble you with this matter." "Mom," Mo Ziyuan said in disbelief, "that lunatic slandered and humiliated me in front of everyone, and you're just letting him go? You said that he was nothing more than a..." Lady Mo inhaled sharply. "Shut up. If you have something to say, you can hold it for later." Mo Ziyuan had never been forced to live through this kind of ordeal or face this kind of disgrace. He especially had never been so harshly reprimanded by his mother. Heart burning with hatred and rage, he roared, "That lunatic is dead tonight!" After Wei Wuxian had finished being insane and exited the hall, he took a stroll around the surrounding village, leaving an innumerable quantity of stunned passers-by in his wake. Finding the situation immensely funny, he began to appreciate the delights of lunacy. He even started to approve of his hanged ghost makeup and was somewhat reluctant to part with it. "There's no water, so I can't wash it off anyway," he thought to himself. He fixed his hair and glanced at his wrists, but his injuries showed no signs of improvement or even change. In other words, embarrassing the Moors, a light, petty revenge, was nowhere near enough. Did Mo Xuanyi really want him to slaughter his entire family? To be honest, it wasn't as though it was difficult. Wei Wuxian pondered this question while walking back to the house. He pranced by the western courtyard and saw some Lan juniors standing atop the roofs and walls, discussing something with very serious looks on their faces. He pranced back to them, raised his head, and gazed at them, a strange mix of feelings in his heart. Even though the Gusu Lan clan was a major participant in the siege of, well, him, these juniors hadn't been born yet when that had happened, or they had only been a few years old. It had nothing to do with him. As he continued observing their preparations for the night, he suddenly realized that something seemed odd. Why did the black flags fluttering in the wind atop the roofs and walls look so familiar? The black flags were a type of flag called a yin summoning flag. If stuck on a living person, it attracted all the dark spirits, vengeful ghosts, fierce corpses, and evil demons within a certain radius, and caused them to attack only the flag bearer. Because the flag bearer acted as living bait, effectively drawing a big target on themselves, the flag was also called a target flag. They could also be stuck on buildings, but the buildings were required to have living people in them, and everyone inside was susceptible to being attacked. Wherever the flag was stuck, yin energy would begin swirling around the area, as though it had been engulfed in a slow black whirlwind. Thus, the flag was also known as a black wind flag. The reason the youths would not allow others to come near as they were setting up the flag array must have been because they wanted to draw in and capture all the walking corpses in one fell swoop. As for why the flags looked familiar, how couldn't they? The inventor of the yin summoning flag was the old master of healing himself. It seemed that though all the cultivation houses had furiously called for his head, they had no qualms about using the things he had invented. One of the juniors standing atop nearby eaves spotted Wei Wuxian. "You should go back. This isn't somewhere you should be," he said. Though he was trying to get rid of Wei Wuxian, the youth had good intentions and spoke in a tone entirely unlike the tone the servants had taken earlier. But Wei Wuxian, who had other plans, hopped up and plucked one of the flags, catching the youth off guard. That junior jumped off the wall and darted after him, still slightly in shock. "Don't mess around! These things shouldn't be played with!" Wei Wuxian, face smeared with powder, hair flying everywhere, hands and feet dancing with glee, looked, of course, completely insane. As he ran, he shouted, "No, no, no take backsies. I want one. It's mine." In 2 steps, the junior caught up and pulled on Wei Wuxian's arm. "Are you going to give it back? If you don't, I'll hit you." Wei Wuxian hugged the flag so tightly no one could have pried it from his cold, dead hands. Alarmed by what was passing, the leader of the Lan Juniors, originally busy with overseeing the construction of a flag formation, floated down from the eaves. He approached them. "Jingyi, it's all right. Please just get it back from him nicely. There's no need to quarrel." "It's not like I actually hit him, Sijue," Lan Jingyi said. "Just look at him. He ruined our flag formation." Making good use of the 2 Lan's brief lapse of attention, Wei Wuxian had already finished inspecting the yin summoning flag in his hands. The marks were drawn correctly, and no words were missing from the spell. In short, there was nothing wrong with it, and it would function correctly when used. However, the one who had drawn it was still inexperienced, so the flag could only attract evil spirits and walking corpses from no more than 2.5 kilometers away. But it was good enough. With a smile hinting at his lips, Lan Sijue said, "Young Master Mo, it's almost dark. We'll need to start catching walking corpses soon. It will be dangerous tonight, so it would be better if you return to your room." Wei Wuxian gave this youth a once-over. His demeanor was gentle, refined, and graceful, and the corners of his mouth were lightly upturned, as though they constantly held a slight grin. The flag formation he had overseen was impeccable, and his upbringing was not so bad either. In short, he was a highly commendable young man, and in his heart, Wei Wuxian approved of him, though it amazed him that even in a frightening place filled with uptight fuddy-duddies like the Kusu Lan clan, there was someone who could bring up such a splendid young man. Lan Sijue spoke again. "This flag." Without waiting for him to finish, Wei Wuxian threw the flag on the ground. "It's only a dumb flag. What's so great about it? I can draw one way better." As soon as he finished, he picked up his legs and ran. Several youths resting on the rooftops saw the commotion, heard the shameless boasting, and began laughing so hard they were in danger of slipping off of the roofs and tumbling to the ground. Irritated, Lan Jingyi also began snickering. He picked up the flag and patted off the dirt. "That man really is a lunatic." "Let's not speak that way," Lan Sijue said. "We should return quickly and help finish up." Wei Wuxian didn't return to Mo Xuanyu's small courtyard until the sun had set, choosing instead to loaf around the house a few times. When he did return, he saw that no one had bothered to clean up the mess that was Mo Xuanyu's room. The latch on his door was still broken, and the floor was still covered with debris. Deciding he'd rather not look at the ugly sight, he cleared an empty patch on the ground, sat down, closed his eyes, and went back to meditating. Who knew that long before sunrise, he would be pulled out of his reverie by a loud commotion outside his door. Frantic footsteps mixed with the sound of sobbing and sharp cries of alarm, rapidly approaching him. Wei Wuxian heard a few phrases repeated several times. Rush in and pull him out. Go tell the officials." "Tell what officials?" "Cover his head and beat him to death." He opened his eyes just as several servants charged inside. The entire courtyard was lit brightly by flame. "Drag this murderous lunatic to the main hall and let him pay with his life," someone screamed.
Well, there, the end of that second chapter. What do you reckon? Is it any good? Do you like it? Perhaps I should do the next chapter. Chapter 3? Nah, we'll stop there. And we will do that in the next one. So, onwards and upwards. See you in the next one. Bye. Please comment, like, subscribe and share and do all those wonderful things and have a wonderful day, evening, everything. Okay.